So when I went to community college, many of you know that it's the first 2 years of an education. When I did those first 2 years, I was already amazed. Everybody in my family was so proud I had a community college degree. And I thought, I'm encouraged, I'm going to try to continue going on to school. So I went to night school in Chicago. So during the day, I still cleaned carpets all over, and I sold ladies' shoes on the weekends, and I refinished antique furniture as an independent thing. I was a hustler. And in 1983, in November, I had a cleaning gig, near the University of Chicago. So as I entered this house, there was a map of the world on the wall. So I entered the house, and on the left, there's this map of the world, and all over the world were these flags. And this guy came out, he was probably 70 years old, all these dirty clothes and suitcases below the map. And he said, I'm so sorry, I just got back from China. This was 1983. And as you know, that's very early to come. And he said, I haven't put away my suitcases or my clothes. I got back 2 days ago. And he said, today I'm going to make a flag. And I've been waiting my life to put this flag into China. And he said, you're a tall guy. Could you help me later put this flag in? He said, the carpet I want you to clean was downstairs. I hated that kind of carpet. Do you remember shag carpet? Oh man, that was so hard to clean because you're using a very powerful, right? And it just is so hard. It would pull so much water out. And I looked down there and I was angry, not angry, but just disappointed. But I also was nervous. So I'm down there thinking, and I'm down there cleaning, and 2 hours later, he calls me up, and I'm really nervous. Why? Because I didn't know where China was on a map. So, he said that, and this was going to be one of the first times I had to acknowledge, kind of in front of a person, that I was kind of stupid. I was embarrassed to be called out on this. So when I got back up to the map, I looked, and he says, he made it out of a toothpick and a little red fabric or something, red, paper. He said, put it up there. And he said, even better, put it in Beijing. And I said, man, wow, that doesn't help me. So I told him, I said, I know China's over here somewhere, but I said, I don't know where it is. And he kind of laughed because he thought I was joking, because I found out he was a University of Chicago professor. So of course, every student he had ever come across obviously knew where China was on a map. And then he kind of looked at me and he saw I was telling the truth, and he felt pity. And he said, let me help you. And he took my hand and he put it up there, and I put it into where Beijing was, supposedly. I don't know. And he said, let me sit down with you. I want to share some stories with you. So he sat down and we talked for about an hour, and he talked all about China. 1983, China was one of the poorest countries in the world. And he was saying China is going to change the world. And he said the Chinese government asked him to find some English teachers. And I know they wanted him to find some University of Chicago students, not a night school kid who cleans carpets. And I said, man, I would not, China doesn't need an English speaker like me. My English was not very good. It was kind of redneck English. So I felt that I was not the most appropriate English teacher. But I was curious. Suddenly the first time I spoke to somebody who had a lot of education, he talked to me about China. That's all he talked about. And I left his place not knowing that would change my life, that visit. So what happened then 2 days later at my night school, I'm waiting for my class. And I see my classroom, I go to my classroom, and there's a poster, Study in China. The Chinese government announces the first independent student scholarships to study in China. But I think some of you may remember on these old paper, they would have these little pieces you could rip off at the bottom. Nobody had ripped off a piece. I don't think there was really anyone who wanted to go to China in 1983. And I took off the thing. I took off one of the pieces of paper. It was a telephone number. And I went back, I lived with my grandma who had a bar in Chicago. And I told my grandma, I said, Grandma, I want to call this number. Oh, it's a long distance call. It's Washington, D.C. I think you remember in the 80s, long distance calls were a little expensive. And I said, I promise I'll wash dishes for the next week for you if you let me make this call. So I called up and I found out it was a Chinese embassy in D.C. And I said, I saw your poster. And I said, I'm interested in maybe going to China. And the first thing they asked me is, do you speak Chinese? I just started out laughing. It seemed like the further, how speak Chinese, come on. How can you speak Chinese? And then they said, what do you know about China? And I said, well, I know where it is on the map now. I could tell you where. And they just kind of thought, who is this guy? And they said, why do you want to come to China? And I said, I told them I would like to write an essay. And I said, I'll write something for you and I'll send it over. So I grew up with a father who went to the Korean War and came back at 17 or whatever, 18, and he never finished, high school. Never finished, really got into high school, I think. So I had always heard these stories from my parents that kind of said, in some ways, they felt the so-called American dream was a bit elusive, was hard. They had to more or less claim bankruptcy when my father got Parkinson's. That's a reality of the States for some of us. And I told them, I wrote to the Chinese embassy, I told them his story. I said, I've grown up with a father who's been telling me all this life that the American dream seemed a bit hard to get. And I am a carpet cleaner at 20 years old who needs a new beginning. And I said, I'll go to China and I'm willing to look for a new dream, even if it means in China. So I think some of you have heard of the China dream, right? Xi Jinping called this the Chinese dream. 2013, he started using that. And, I always say in China, and it brings some uncomfortable, responses when I give talks, is 30 years before Xi Jinping coined that term, I had coined the term with the Chinese embassy that I was looking for a Chinese dream. And that they gave me the scholarship. China was still very red. It was still very socialist. And they even wrote something when they wrote back talking about the proletariat. And I didn't even understand what it meant. But in some way, they felt that I was of the working class and they were giving me an opportunity. So that changed, that kind of this idea of a Chinese dream didn't end there. I arrived in Beijing at the end of August 1984. I left Chicago and I flew to Luxembourg on a cheap flight, and I hitchhiked all the way to Warsaw, got a train, and then took the train from Moscow. That cost me $300, $350. It was cheaper than flying directly to China because I didn't know how long I would be there. Back there were very few flights to China. So I arrived in Beijing, and the second day I was at Beijing University, I was out running out in the area, the university district, out near the Summer Palace. And suddenly in front of me, a yellow Mercedes stopped. In 1984 China, there were no cars. A yellow Mercedes is, who could this be? It must be Deng Xiaoping. It must be, I had no idea who it could be. And 3 people got out of the car. I didn't speak a word of Chinese. So they started talking to me in a very active, very excited. I thought even maybe it was angry. Maybe they found out I was a carpet cleaner. Give me back the scholarship, or something. I didn't know what was happening. So I took them to the entrance of Beijing University, and we waited about 10 minutes until we could find somebody who spoke English well enough. Back then, very few people spoke English. And it was a young woman, and I said, what happened? Did I do something wrong? Did I make a mistake? And she translated for me, and she said, no, this is the head of the Beijing Film Studio. It is a famous director and a movie actress. And the Chinese government has just given them permission to make the first movie since 1949 to have a foreign leading actor. Would you play that role? I was looking around, I thought it was like, maybe it was, like candid camera. I thought this was a hazing incident. And I'm looking around, I'm saying, what are you talking about? I can't speak a word of Chinese. How can I make a movie? And I asked them and they said, they will dub everything. I said, still, how can I act? I don't even know what I'm saying. And they said, they'll make it work. There were no foreigners in 1984. So suddenly there's one guy they see, they probably were driving around for 35 years since the revolution. There's a foreigner, he's our actor. And they paid me an above scale $200 for 4 months of filming. Wow, China back then, $200 was a yearly salary. So they were very proud that they were giving me 4 times the going rate, But of course I had to take the offer, and I made the movie. The movie was horrible. It was called He Came From Across the Pacific. So I was a he. And just think, can you imagine they didn't speak English? And I didn't speak Chinese. So you know what what the film was like? We filmed on Renmin University for my residence was at Renmin Dashi. And they filmed part of it there where you went to school. And, they could only, behind these big cameras and all these important people, 35 people, 40 people in the production crew, and all they could do was be behind the camera and just say, 3, happy, 5. Sad. And I found out that they wanted me to speak for 3 minutes in a happy way because they were just going to dub my voice. So I'm sitting with somebody and I just, and I didn't know what to do. It's really hard to fill 3 minutes of space. Then think 5 minutes, 7 minutes once they ask me, what do you do for 7 minutes? And how do you keep a sad face? So this, to me, after the first week of filming, I was pretty depressed. I was pretty sad. I was thinking maybe I made the wrong decision. And I was driving back in that yellow Mercedes. On the weekend, they would send me back to Beijing University because I had a dormitory there. So when we were not filming, they sent me back. And I was in the back of that yellow Mercedes after a long day, and I suddenly heard a song on the radio. Very, very popular song in 1980s China, probably here as well, Country Roads by John Denver, right? I think all of us know Country Roads. Probably we all know the words, right? And I was sitting in the back of that car, and I was just sitting there kind of singing to myself. And I realized, Country Roads, wow, about 3 minutes. Then I realized my favorite song, wow, Hotel California, I know all the words, 5 minutes. Wow, Bohemian Rhapsody, 7 minutes. So for the next 3 months, all my lines were, welcome to the Hotel California. What a lovely place. Or there's a lady who knows all that glitters is gold, and she's buying. So all my lines were songs. So when the movie came out, I could see myself saying, Mamma Mia, and I'm speaking beautiful Chinese. So it was such a bad movie, but what it did is it gave me a break. And because of that break, CBS News came and interviewed me. And CBS News said, Brian, we can't get anybody to come to China. We have a position, nobody wants to come. It was considered such a hardship case. And they said, when you're finished filming, would you be willing to join our team? And I said, I have never used a camera. I don't know how to use a camera. They said, we've got an extra film camera, and George Michael and Wham are coming to China. And they said, would you follow them around and make a movie for us? And we'll give you the camera for a month. When you're filming in the evenings after you're making the movie, try to learn to use it. And then they said, we are not expecting something good. We're not going to use it, but we just want to see if you can put something together for us. So in whatever spring of '85, I followed kind of George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley around and took video. And I put together a little thing with Wake Me Up Before You Go, and I put together almost like a music video where I showed the Chinese reaction where they could not get up. Everybody in the audience could not move. And some of the foreigners in the audience got up and were dancing. So the guard said would not interfere with those foreigners dancing, but they would interfere with the Chinese. They would say, please sit down to the Chinese guests. But when the foreigners got up, they kind of didn't know what to do. They were too polite to say, please sit down. And I put that together and they hired me. Suddenly I'm making 3,000 US a month, from more than my father ever made. And they provided me with housing. So I became, we interviewed Deng Xiaoping with Mike Wallace. We did 60-minute segments. I was above when David Copperfield walked through the wall. I was up in the helicopter. We couldn't use any of the film because it was too bumpy. It was too turbulent. But man, I'm a carpet cleaner, and suddenly I'm hanging out with, leaders. The leaders had seen my movie, and I would be hanging out waiting for Kissinger to arrive, and Zhao Ziyang and Hu Yaobang would come over and say, Brian, this work isn't good for you. Go make another movie. We liked your movie. And it was just such an open time. Jiang Zemin, who became the premier, as you know, later, he was the party secretary of Shanghai. When we filmed the 3-week segment on Shanghai in the 1986 for 60 minutes, Jiang Zemin had dinner with us 4 times. The first 3 times, we were at the Yan'an Fandian, the Dinglo penthouse. The first 3 times, he sang to us a different Elvis Presley song. Just like we're sitting here eating, crab, and suddenly he gets up and starts singing Love Me Tender. It was just so amazing, the openness and the hope that all of us had. We were communicating at a level that was so human. It was so real, it was so emotional. You know what he did when he sent us off? When he sent us off there, he recited Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. So this was the environment of China at that time. It was so exciting. There was still a lot of, it was still very closed. I, as a young man there, I could not date local girls. You could not have a relationship with anyone. I knew Gong Li, the actress. I knew Zhang Yimou. I knew these people. I could not in any way have a relationship with any Chinese actress or television personality. I was arrested 18 times in the 80s. So I had to learn Chinese. I wanted to learn Chinese. And there were no places in 1980s China where you could interact with Chinese people. There were no cafes. There were no private restaurants. There were no facilities where you could interact with Chinese for a long enough time to ever learn the language. Nothing. When I wanted to take a Chinese friend into the Beijing hotel for a cup of instant coffee, I had to go register in advance. And they may face some repercussions from their work unit if they were not considered, if it were considered in any way suspect, that relationship. So how did I learn Chinese? I traveled around the country all over. Spent 200 nights on trains in the 80s. Every time I could, I would go out. And why did I do that? Because it was the only place I could be with Chinese people. The only place you could sit down, it was incredibly uncomfortable. You didn't have seats most of the time. The bathrooms were filled with people. But what you had was when you took a trip from Beijing to Urumqi, it was 78 hours of interaction with people in front of you. And it was the only place you could learn about China. So I've learned about this country from a very low, from the humane level, from the people to people. And that country I respected so much. I became the first person at Stanford to get their top PhD scholarship. Could you imagine how audacious I was? A carpet cleaner, a community college kid, night school kid. I met my wife in Nanjing. She is a 3rd-generation Chinese American. She was studying Mandarin, and I gave a talk at the Johns Hopkins University program there. And because of that relationship with her, she was from San Francisco, I asked her, where should I apply to go to PhD? Come on, I have a PhD. I didn't even know how to, I never studied trigonometry or, or anything. And so I was kind of a little bit idealistic. And she told me 3 schools in San Francisco. She said University of San Francisco, Berkeley, and Stanford. I had only heard of Stanford. Why? Because of John Elway. He was a quarterback. And I thought John Elway was not the smartest guy. I always felt he was a guy like me, kind of like a guy who was kind of, yeah, you know. And I thought if John Elway could go to that school, that must not be a very good school. So the only place I applied was Stanford. And they gave me a $30,000 a year scholarship and free tuition. And they told me I was the first person to come from community college to get that scholarship. And why did they give it to me? You think it's because I'm a good carpet cleaner? No, it was because of what I had in China. So many ways China created me. And in many ways I've wanted ever since then to share a more nuanced understanding of China. I feel that many of us don't get to see, don't understand China at a day-to-day level. The changes there are remarkable. It's just a miracle. In 1980s, it was so poor. Did any of you travel there in the 80s? Yeah. So you remember how hard it was, right?
People took photos of stewardess in railway stations.
Exactly.
Because they'd never seen white people.
No.
Same in the 90s.
Yeah, even in the 90s a bit, yeah. So after I left Stanford, I felt that I wanted to do something to give back. I didn't want to go into corporate, world or whatever, even though I have worked in that in Silicon Valley. I found it never very satisfying. So what I did is I worked in education investment around the world. I've worked in 80 countries. My parents have never left the country. My sister has never visited me in 40 years out here. That is the reality of some of us back home. There's nothing against that.
What did you study at Stanford?
Economics. So I mean, what I feel is that, I wanted to go out there and encourage other people like me, because I realize that there are some, it's an unfair playing field sometimes. If I had not had that meeting with that carpet cleaning, the guy, I would still be cleaning carpets. And to me, this is something that really is amazing, that it changes. And I know that some people will say, no, Brian, you would have figured out something else. But it would not have been so seamless and easy. China made it so simple for me. Whenever I traveled in the 1990s and would work, in South America or in Africa, I would often introduce myself and I say, my name is Brian, I'm from Chicago. They get so excited. Chicago, wow, let me touch you. Michael Jordan. And then I say, yeah, but I've lived in China for the last, I love China. Do you guys know anything about China? And they'd say, Scottie Pippen. And it's like they knew more about the Bulls than they knew about China. And even then they didn't care about China. And I started thinking that this is a problem, because I saw China working really hard to make up a lot of this difference. I saw the people of my generation in China working so hard. This is a book I wrote as well in Chinese, and it became a kind of a bestseller there, and it's called Redefining Diplomacy. What happened is that, unfortunately, 25% was censored. It wasn't because of anything politically sensitive. It was a whole chapter I wrote about the tradition of Chinese art and the copying that goes on, and about how it has gotten so good that it can even cheat people like me. While I was at Stanford, even when I was there with this amazing scholarship and everything, I directed the International Center's evening activities. I worked at America's largest auction house, Butterfield and Barterfield. I trained myself into how they helped to train me into appraising Asian antiquities. I could not sit still. And you can see I walk a lot too, you know, so I am very, very active and I want to learn. So in many ways, this book I wrote talks about that journey, and it's been very well received. I can tell you what happened just this week is the Financial Times also released a feature on me where the Financial Times it says an American farewell to China. And it talks a little bit about my feelings of just concern that as I get older there, after investing millions of dollars in China, after 7 shops, after 7 hotels right now we run, after doing poverty alleviation, after interviewing Deng Xiaoping, you know, I still don't have security. I don't have any long-term security there. You have more security than Thailand than I ever have. And just think all we've done there. We set up in 2003, we decided that we needed to do more to help the world understand China. And please don't think it's just for China's sake, it's also for our sake. Because I felt that in many cases, these guys who were talking to me about Michael Jordan were destined to we would have problems with China in the future. China was working too hard. They were hustling just like I hustled all my life. I got to Stanford out of hustle. And I saw China doing the same thing. And I was worried that we in the West, who had become fairly complacent, were not in the position to understand that is going to be a challenge for us.
You said you don't have any security in China before. The Western people feel more safe in China than they do in the West, right?
No, not. In fact, it's so safe in China. But I'm saying visa-wise.
Oh, yeah.
Visa-wise, yeah. China is incredibly safe, and I feel so comfortable there, no problem. But what happens is, as in China, they don't have anything like a long-term visa. They don't have a retirement visa. They don't have, and after all the money we've invested and everything, we just felt, you know, there comes a time where a person like me, China has been my home. And now they're saying, if I stop working, it's not your home anymore. You know, we don't need you. And that to me is kind of sad after all we've given back.
That is just a very good point because I was really surprised because I want to retire in Japan. And I was surprised that Japan don't allow me to retire.
No.
And I was shocked to find out that China and Japan don't allow me to retire.
No. So those are issues that I feel we need to, we need to talk about a little bit, especially as China wants to become this major, an international power. I argue in the press in China and during my talks that we have to define Chinese-ness more than just a color of a skin. It has to be ideals. It has to be values. And those values have to transcend a color. And this is something that is going to be a long process. We are accepted in China with incredible warmth and hospitality. The government has been my partner in all of these projects. It is not like anyone is out to get you. What happens is institutionally, there are no clear, laws. So nobody knows. Everybody wants to help you. The article in the Financial Times, I don't know, I put it just out on my LinkedIn and it had 80,000 views and about 500, 600 responses from people saying, we're heartbroken. Many of these come from Chinese. So it's not a reflection of Chinese people or in some ways the government. It's just that there's no clear path yet. And I lived in Japan as well for 2 years, and I always felt more welcomed in China than I did in Japan. At a people-to-people level.
Speak Japanese, you die, so
yeah,
really you don't have anything.
Right. The Chinese have a saying that comes from Confucius, the so-called, possibly. So Confucius was 2,500 years ago. And there's a saying that, isn't it good to have a friend come from afar? 有朋自远方来，不亦乐乎? And this is something that I feel every day of my life there. I am treated with such respect there. And I think for those who get down beyond the big cities and the pressure and they see the day-to-day life with the Chinese, it's very, very welcoming. And those were the stories we wanted to go out and share. 2003, we sold our house in America. We gave up our jobs. I was working in a kind of a startup in Silicon Valley, education investment that was doing things for Harvard and everything. And we left, and my two boys were 5 and 8. And we packed up all their textbooks, and we had about 700,000 US dollars saved. And we said, we're going to go to China, and we're going to create a 24/7 Davos. We're going to create an Aspen Institute. We're going to create this think tank. And we're going to challenge all of us to go beyond the city and see the China that we fell in love with, and also that really, I feel, reflects more of not just the recent 30 years of economic change, but the previous 4,970 years that made up China. That is the DNA of China. Nobody, I argue with the ambassadors invite me to their homes to give talks, the US ambassador to give talks to all the ambassadors. I will challenge them. They are the windows for us to understand the country. So are a lot of those diplomats. And often many of them never leave the comfort zones of the big cities. They have a vacation, and where do they go? Phuket. They go to Bali. They go back to the States. So what I feel is that if you really want to understand the country, you have to do your homework. It's not just sitting in an office building in Beijing and speaking maybe a little bit of Chinese and not even reading it. So this is something that I feel we are challenging the Western community to try to have a deeper understanding. We may then be more maybe an understanding of the policies that are coming out of Beijing at this time and understand where they're coming from. But yeah, we sold our house, we came here, we looked for 2 years in China. We homeschooled our boys in little hotels, and hostels. And we were looking for a historic building. We wanted to take over a very big complex that we could create this center for cultural exchange and learning. And it took us, we looked all over. It was really hard in China to find an old structure of that size. There are many statistics out there about the age of a building, the average age of a building. In Europe, when you take the average age of buildings, like say in London, the average age of a building is about 120 years. In America, it's almost 70. Do you know what it is in China now? 16. So what does that show? It shows a country that is so proud of its heritage, but not taking the time to take care of its built heritage, not seeing the importance of that. And we wanted to set a precedent and do something different. So we found a national heritage site in Yunnan, in the city of Dali, outside of Dali. And the government had just taken it back from from an elementary school. And they had built a new school for them. So when we came to see them and we saw it in 2003, the government saw me with my two boys, 5 and 8, and my wife, and we were so naive, idealistic. We're just talking about love and, relationships and, people to people. And they just said, God, these guys are so naive, so idealistic. But they also said, this is cool. Because early 2000s was one of the most, capitalism, it was so egregious in China. It was so aggressive. Everybody was trying to make fast money. Nobody had long-term planning. Suddenly here's this couple, and they're saying, oh yeah, we want to be here, we want to stay here and restore a national heritage site based on the traditions of Liang Zizheng, the most famous architect from the 20th century, talking to them about his, Confucian traditions, about Neo-Confucianists, about Taoism. They were like blown away. And they said, we'll give this to you guys. We'll let you do this. So, but you have to give us a token rent or else we'll get in maybe potentially political trouble. So we paid $2,500 a year for this beautiful compound. But don't think that's so special, because what happened is then we had to invest $700,000 in getting it to a certain level where it would be functional. And we did that over 2 years. We worked only with local people. We did not bring in outside architects. We used a local ethnic woman as an architect. We wanted to demonstrate to everyone that the locals can do the job. We don't need to cut corners anymore by hiring someone from Tongji or one of the top universities to come down and do something when the locals, the grandparents of these people built these places. Why are we bringing in experts from Beijing? And they were so proud of this project. We were able to open in 2008. It was our attempt to create a social enterprise. So I wanted to do things like poverty alleviation, microfinance, education. And the only way I could do that in China, because NGOs are not encouraged, is through a social enterprise. I had to prove to the Chinese government that I could function as a business. And I like that. I like that challenge. I don't want to just go out. I worked for an NGO in the mid-90s, and I spent 95% of my time chasing money and 5% doing what I thought I wanted to do. I wanted to be the opposite. I wanted to do 95% of the things I wanted to do, and 5% maybe of sometimes just running the business that I didn't always like to do. So we set up a hotel and a restaurant in this National Heritage Site. And we had 16 guest rooms. Okay, this is a site. So this is a National Heritage Site. Nobody has done a project like this in China. It's illegal to work on National Heritage Sites. These should only be used for museums or something, or protection. So the government gave us this building, allowed us to start our project, and then about a year later, Beijing contacted them and said, they're not supposed to be doing this. And again, in a very Chinese way, they would not kind of directly criticize us. So they came to the local government and said, this is a problem. This is illegal. And the local government said, these guys have invested $500,000 in a year and a half of their time. What do we do? And the government said, let's try to let it go. So they've watched us very, very closely. But up until now, this is really unprecedented. And it's meant that we have to be very, very good stewards of this place. The government is, rightfully so, they should always be watching. We were able to make 16 guest rooms in this building. We also have a restaurant, we have library, we have cafe bar, we have a fitness center, kids rooms. And by 2011, we were TripAdvisor's Hotel of the Year for all of China and Hong Kong. We were one of the top hotels, which was ridiculous because this was not uber luxurious. But what it showed is that people responded because they finally felt, most of the comments were, I finally understand what China's like. I finally feel like I'm in China. These were the responses. And it became so popular. And the government said, wow, we didn't know this could work so well. Do more for us. And what I wanted to do then is I had a second compound that I took along with this one. It's about 3/4 of that size. We took that site over because we thought we would create an education site. And that became even more imperative, I think, for us because we found that most of the people coming to our site here were people our age, kind of coming with a little bit of wealth. It was not cheap. It was $100 a night to stay there. And we were having an impact on people, 80% foreign. But I also wanted to impact young people. So the second site we created, we focused solely on students. And I went out and used my initial contacts, and I first set up, one of the first programs we set up was President Obama's Girls' School. Do you know Sidwell Friends in Washington, D.C.? That's where everybody went, and a lot of leaders, their kids go there. I set up there, we created their whole semester program here. So not only did they come to Xizhou for a week, they came to our site for 4 to 5 months and got all 16 of their credits. What did they study? They studied Dali. They studied Yunnan. 50% of the class was in our classrooms, 50% was in the village. It was one of the most innovative programs in China. Shanghai American School then wanted to do the same thing. So that is one of the oldest international schools in China. They did 4 one-month programs. I did graduate programs in microfinance, in MBAs. And all of these were kind of credit-bearing courses. It was unheard of in China. And again, it's almost illegal because we are a hospitality industry and we're doing education. But the government loved it and they were supportive. So this is what, we have tried to do. The government, again, by 2013, they said, again, great job, Brian, education, everything, do another one. And I said, guys, I have no money. My wife and I, we're out of money and we're not making that much money. I don't know how I'm going to get my money back. And they said, we'll introduce you to some investors. So they introduced me to a lot of real estate developers. And we felt our values were not always aligned. So we turned them down. There was one investor from Guangzhou, very famous, sent me a Land Rover. A Land Rover suddenly appeared at the entrance of this store here. We have 70 staff at the time. Not one of us had a driver's license. So it just sat there, and after about a month or 2 months, the local farmers were getting angry, and I asked them to please get the Land Rover out of there. And he had to send a driver from Guangzhou to drive it back. But that was not going to impact us. In retrospect, from a financial point of view, we were a bit naive. We haven't made a lot of money.
Actually, you did a good decision.
I think so. Yeah, and we've heard that, and so we have been very, very careful, as you said, and but as we get older now, and now we do face challenges. We still have money in China. We have a brand that means a lot, but a business model that is not that profitable. The reason why is mainly because the Chinese have something called 内卷. This is over competition, devolution. This idea, what happens in China is the Chinese having this incredible entrepreneurial spirit. Everybody is out there and there's such a drive. And what will happen is you will set something up and there will be 50 other people kind of doing similar things. Yeah. Everywhere, almost everywhere it's happening. So I admire that spirit. But as a business person, you realize that you have to look more short-term now, because long-term you're going to be out-competed, mainly by price. Because what happens in a place like ours, like Xizhou, this village has 2,500 people. 10 years ago, there was 1 coffee shop. Now there are 100. So do we need 100 coffee shops? No. Do the Xizhou people? Okay. Oh, Dalification, yes. I've heard that. But these things are all, these are all the issues we face right now. And that's why I'm here, in fact, in Chiang Mai, is Jeannie and I, my wife and I, we want some security. Asia is important to us, all of Asia. We want to be here. And I think it would be very hard to make a transition back to the States for us. So we are looking in Chiang Mai right now for a place to live, and we will continue to run our sites up north. But I have a team that can help to manage those. I will focus more on the diplomatic, the media. I did an interview yesterday. CCTV, Chinese Central TV, called me while I was at the museum in the Three Kings Museum, behind there. Suddenly I got a message and they said, Brian, please, we really want to talk to you. The recent FT, the FT article made it appear that in some ways I was critical of China.
I think we made 2 questions and answer at the end of your presentation, and we give some time for that.
Okay. Sure. So this is that happened yesterday, and I think Jeannie and I just want to be able to still be active, but I still think this is a better place, maybe a more secure place for us from a visa point of view. So we'll look at that, and we hope that a lot of you, many of you, we want to be a part of a community here. That's so important to us. So we hope that many of you will be friends and colleagues, and any way that I can offer support or help or do anything here vis-a-vis China, I'm always here to do that. But thank you. Can I take? May I take some questions from you guys, please? Oh, she has one right there.
Please read the questions.
Okay.
The original site, the one with the orange wall, you said it was a heritage site. What was in there? Was there a school, or was it partly empty, or what did they use it for?
Did you all hear? That's okay. That was originally a very wealthy merchant's home. So the village of Shizhou, which is about 20 kilometers north of Dali, it was kind of the bankers. It was the middlemen on what was known as the Tea-Horse Road. So the trade. So they were the brokers. They would send a caravan up to Tibet and bring down horses, and they would send it to southern China and bring up tea. And a lot of them would meet then in this area. These were the bankers. And they have incredible homes. We have 3 buildings in the village. We have an even larger building now. In 2014, the government came to us with $2 million and said we can restore the largest building in the village. And that has become our conference center. We have a cooking school. We have a fitness kind of, retreat area. And that has also, but again, none of these places is making a lot of money because there are a lot of newly constructed buildings that can compete with us at such low prices. It's really hard. Yes, you had a question here, sir.
For those of us who are still very ignorant of Chinese geography, could you actually explain what region this is? It's been, as you said, Dalian, right? And something about the region.
Okay, you know what? For many of us, no, it's just north of here. So from Chiang Mai, you can fly. If you were able to fly on a nonstop flight to Dali, it would be about an hour.
Okay.
So it's about 500 miles north by northeast of it. We're about 200 miles west of Kunming.
Okay.
So we're in the vestiges of the Himalayas there. Our site in Dali, this site is at 2,000 meters. Our site, if you saw the other site that was contemporary, did you see that contemporary building? That is made out of rammed earth. The government came to me this is about 100 kilometers north of Dali on a mountaintop. And they came to me and said, Brian, can I do something to help this village? We looked in the village, there were only about a few hundred people. If we went in the village, we would destroy the village. Because not only our presence, but immediately others following us. So we asked them, there was a piece of property across the lake from the village, and if we could revitalize rammed earth, because everybody is using cement right now in China. And could we take the original building material and make it sexy, make it interesting? So the building you saw there, that building that was contemporary, that won the American Architecture Award in 2019. And we did it all ourselves. We did it all ourselves, my team. So this to me shows that all of us can accomplish so much if we just put our mind to it and are dedicated. I'm worried that China, because of these 20, 40 years of economic boom, that they constantly are doing the shortcuts. They're doing shortcuts. And I believe that Chinese culture, and that's not the reality of China. I think it's just an expedience to survive in this time of economic changes. I think we have to all work with the Chinese and like us to do, they love what we do. They admire what we do. And others are trying to do this now. So hopefully others will be inspired by what we have done. May I get just that pointer? I'll just show you that. Is it up here? Oh, here, okay. So this building. So this is the lake is right there, see on the right, and the village is across. And we created, rammed earth is very hard to get to this level, especially in an earthquake zone. So this took us 18 months of experimentation with different soils. And we failed. We built one thing and it started to crack, so we felt we gave up. And, but this was all funded by the Chinese government, and it was part of a poverty alleviation fund. Ever since then, I have developed an education site, volunteer library, microfinance in this basin on the top of the mountain.
Can you explain what rammed earth is?
It's just, more or less, it's just mud. It's just mud, just the local soils, and you mix it with straw, you can mix it with different things. Some people use, what do you call it, lomi. Yeah, like sticky rice. So you can kind of mix things in this. So we tried all different things. But what we wanted to do was just inspire the Chinese to really have confidence in their own building traditions. Look at how beautiful that is. I mean, when you're up there. And our goal was not to be flashy and ostentatious. We built it at different contours so it would just blend into the mountain. So this isn't some vanity project for an architect. This is how to build and blend in. And this is something that's been very, very successful. It's quite expensive. I always say in Chinese, 我住不起, which means I can't afford to live there. So, but it has been very, very successful. And the government wanted us to create something that was really, a very special project so that future dignitaries and people can come there and stay.
So Linden, thank you for your decades of service in China and your huge investment, as well as your family's investment of time. But I was just curious, do you have a Chinese partner that owns a property?
No.
So how do you prepare for the Hong Kong effect? You know what I mean?
No, I'm not certain what you mean.
So, the British and many foreign countries and companies, they invested a lot in Hong Kong. 1999 came, it's all back to the Chinese government.
Yeah. No, we don't. In China, we cannot own the land. We can't even own the buildings, whatever. So what you do is you get a long-term lease. But the Chinese government has invested. So to show you what happened was when they came, and I told you we did the first two ourselves. By that time, it had been about $1 million US that we had invested so far. The Chinese government came to us and said, you are very important and we want more of this. If you're not going to work with real estate developers, we will work with you and we will buy your brand for exclusive use within the Dali prefecture. We will pay you back the money that you have invested, and we will ensure that you have money to grow. So, talk about respect. So in many ways, I have gotten my money out of here, but I would never have if the Chinese government didn't give me that offer. Because I would have continually done to the point where now at my age, I would have a few $1,000,000 sitting, more than that, and I would have no way of getting that money out. The Chinese government knew that, and they, in some ways, took care of us. So this to me is really a kind of a nice story. We have been able to grow this project, as I said, over $2 million US, even more, $3 million US. The government invested everything. Our sites up in Shangri-La, our sites north of Shangri-La, our sites in center of Dali, all government invested. So we are very asset light. But what that means as well is we can never make any money on property appreciation. So to investors, they feel that we also don't have a lot of value because we don't have a lot. What do we have? We have more or less management contracts of places, and most of them are not making a lot of money. So our exit strategy is not clear right now, but the government has ensured that the money that we have invested, we have gotten out. And, I'm really grateful that they did that because my wife and I probably until this time would have been naively thinking we were going to do this forever. So, yes, sir.
I've worked with the Lusitania group in Bangkok for a number of years, and I think I remember you coming to meet with us from Janin and Chao last, because the Lusitania group's a Thai hospitality chain, but because of the shortage in skilled workforce, they developed an education division.
Wow, that's right. It's true.
So, our company had to create its education provision to serve its needs and the needs of the wider industry. How are you able to employ skilled hospitality staff in the rural locations that you are in? And how did you train them up, or did you train them up yourselves?
Well, one, we couldn't find them. We are in very rural areas, so no, we don't have, all we are using are local staff. And just think, now we are still almost 40-50% foreign. So you have these local villagers who are having to service, CEOs of Western CEOs. So it has been hard. And because of the competition that I mentioned before, this Nejuan, what that means is that people can constantly take as well. So you see a lot of poaching of staff. And so it's been really hard. That has been the hardest thing for us, is to continue to have a very strong team, because sooner or later they will have better options, especially to those who are coming down to places like from Beijing and Shanghai. What we're seeing right now are people coming down there, not because they feel they have a professional skill to do this, but more they want the quality of life. And they happen to sell their house for $1 million in Beijing, so they can they have money to play with. They don't need to use their business to survive. It's more a way of just staying busy. That's why we have 100 coffee shops. We don't need those, but those coffee shop owners need something to do. And even if they sell 1 cup of coffee a day, it's better than just sitting in their house, you get bored doing that after a while. So we're finding that that's really hard for our competition to keep people. We have had staff for 20 years now, who have stayed with us, but that is not the norm, So that's a challenge for us.
Brian,
Yep.
As you were talking, I found myself bumping up against some of the things you were saying and some of the things that I've been led to believe through media or just opinions in the West about China. So, for instance, you said that everybody is scrambling and that it's a more of a short-term, gotta work, gotta get money type thing, where we're taught that China looks at things from a long-term point of view, and they do 20-year plan, 50-year planning. We're taught that China is out to get us, change the world currency, taking away our economy. That we're and yet you're saying that the Chinese admire us and that they want what we have. And so I guess my question is, can you talk a little bit about how the Chinese think about us? Is there a difference between what the people think and what the government thinks? And why do we have what seems to be a relationship based on animosity?
It's a complicated question, Barbara, very complicated. And I wouldn't be able to answer that. But what I can tell you is that, there is a disconnect sometimes between what Beijing wants and what the local governments, the pressures they face. So please understand that. Whoa, what was that? Maybe that's, I don't know. The Chinese government, national government, I feel is incredible. They have a long-term plan, very, very clear. But then it is a meritocracy there. So the way that the local leaders show their prowess or is by showing economic gain. And often they're in a position for 2 years and then they rotate around. So what that means is that Beijing may have something that's a 20-year plan, but those local leaders only have 2 years in their position. And they have to demonstrate that they can bring economic benefit to go up in the ranks. So what that means is sometimes there's a disconnect. This is something that, in a way, I referred to a little bit in the Financial Times article. Is I was saying that in some ways we are trying to do the right thing based on the messages we get from Beijing. But right now, the local leaders have problems, especially post-COVID, that are not necessarily consistent with what we're doing anymore. And but I'm very proud. I believe China has a very clear idea of where they want to go. I don't know if there's animosity. I have never faced it at all in my life there. I have never had.
In China, because Chinese people from mainland China down here, and they openly said white people are stupid. They openly said white people are disgusting. They openly said
wow,
they're gonna fail.
Okay.
Maybe just we have questions one by one, and we are giving the microphone to each of you. And I hope that you patiently waiting for your turn. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there somebody else here? I'm sorry.
After Barbara will be Guy, and another one will follow. Thank you for your understanding.
Thanks.
No, this is a very, very...
Chinese are the worst in China. I don't know why he's telling them that they like them.
Yeah.
Hate America guys.
Excuse me. May I have your attention? And due to the respect of our presenter and also our participant, we would like to patiently wait till your turn to on the microphone and asking the question. Thank you so much. This is Guy Tam, and it will be another person, and you can raise your hand for your question. Thank you so much.
No, I have a very ordinary workaday thing. This is not working. Could we see on a map actually where you are? Because I know Western China sort of in my head, but I can't visualize where you are.
Can you pull up a map? I'm sorry. A map? Keep going up. So we're here, guys. So here's, with Chiang Mai.
Yeah.
And Dali is right here. So tomorrow I'm going to Chiang Rai, and then I go overland to Luam Nantha, and then I go onto the train line.
I was just interested because I've done work in media, and I just wanted to see where it was in relation to where you are.
Yeah, we're about...
This map here.
Okay.
Rory was able to give it to me. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So I just had a question. In Beijing, there was this tension, as you were saying, between like the old and the new, when they knocked out a lot of the hutons, a lot of the old style accommodation.
Yeah.
And and the local people were very happy, and they got put in very nice high rises. But all the communities that they had, the relationships went. So they said, I've got a nice fancy house, hot water, all this kind of quality of living, which was important for them. And I just wonder, sometimes there's this tension that we come in as Westerners and we look at these wonderful buildings and want to keep them, whereas the local people are maybe wanting something a bit different.
Yes, of course. I mean, most of the local people want more comfort, and these old buildings are not very comfortable. So, yeah, I understand that. And that's why you have 16, an average age of a building now at 16, 18 years old, is because the government has tried to make better housing for these people. Where we are on the mountaintop up there, that rammed earth, there are 3 villages of Yi people up there, some Lisu people, and some also Bai people, and it's rough. It's a hard life. And many of them would prefer to have indoor plumbing and different things if they had a chance. So, hello.
Hi, Brian. My name is Dave. I'm a Chinese. So I'm quite interested in your presentation. A kind of special angle from a foreigner's perspective towards China. So I was deeply impressed that you even know better than I about China. China is my wrong. Actually, I've been in Beijing firstly in 1986, and you actually 2 years earlier than I to start to learn something at Beijing University. So my question actually in twofold. First, in the year 2003, you made a big decision to move your whole family to China. So what prompted you to do that? I think that would be a very courageous and ambitious decision, because it doesn't mean you simply want to replicate your magic story as back early to 1980s to further have China created you more, or you just want to do some business as you presented to based in China to do something for the exchanges of the cultures and the people's communications. So what prompted you to make a decision to come back to China again in the year 2003?
I think that it was mainly this idea that we don't understand. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Is it better? I think maybe it's turned off. I can speak more loudly as well. What I think is that in some way we needed more of these discussions. I mean, there's probably validity in all of our points of view. There are things that, of course, I don't. I think I'm okay with sound-wise. That I think that everybody's view. It's very hard for us. What he was saying. Maybe there's some validity to that. There are people in China who feel as if they aren't welcome sometimes. So this is true. I haven't faced that. So I'm only able to share my own personal aspect. But what I do believe is we need more opportunities for these kind of discussions. Otherwise, our only information is coming through the media and different places. The media, I think, so that is something that I really wanted to try to address. Obviously, we enjoy living in China. I enjoy speaking Chinese. I enjoy learning the culture. I enjoy martial arts. So I studied Chinese martial arts. I enjoy that. But I don't, there were personal reasons for doing it as well. But all I hope is that there are more opportunities for these kind of discussions, especially in a time when many of us it's very hard to get information about China beyond the media, because many of us don't speak the language. If we go over there, the interaction is at a very superficial level. I wish you could follow me. They call me the mayor of the village. So many people say I'm the only foreign mayor in China. And that's because all the locals in some way are there and have taken care of us and raised our kids for us. You know, just think we homeschooled our kids for 11 years in a small village in China. And we would never have been able to do that if that village didn't in some way take care of them as well. And both of my boys ended up going on to university. One is now teaching in Hong Kong at the international school. And they all became martial artists and everything. So it's really fun, you know. So yeah, to me, there was a lot of personal interest in what we did as well, you know. So, but that's it. It's very naive. Nothing that what would you say? You know, nothing that special. I mean, so. But I do think it's necessary and needed. So, any other questions? Yes, sir.
Putting on your PhD in economics at, where do you see China about 20 years from now?
Wow, I think that China, I think that a lot of this has to do with the issue of population right now and how China's going to handle that. You know, I think that AI will be very interesting to see what that means for the future as China has a decreasing population. There are some statistics that say that China may have a population of 800 million by the 2100. Just think that's half of what it is now. So how is this going to be handled when we have so many elderly? You know, how is China going to be able to do this? The one nice thing is China doesn't have such high debt, and they do have a lot of foreign currency exchange. You know, so so they can, in some way, maybe there's a way to continually fund this. I don't know, but I would be I'm still pretty optimistic about China, and part of it comes just from the entrepreneurial spirit of the Chinese people and the emphasis on education. That everybody is constantly being challenged to try to do better. It means for a society that has a lot of pressure, and some would argue not so fun, but it also means for a very strong, you know, and talented workforce. There are a lot of people out there right now who can't find jobs in China who are just incredibly talented. So, yeah. Yes, Steve.
Thank you very much. I have one question for you. Is that obviously you've been in China for the past like 40 years. Obviously, you have seen a lot of changes, mostly good, I hope, changes coming from China, whether it's from the personal, social, people's day-to-day life, or maybe it's whether competition from businesses or even policies coming from the Chinese government. Obviously, in the future, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, so even the next 40 years, we obviously things are very uncertain. Especially now, we see that where globalization seems to have a little bit of challenge worldwide. And what do you see in the future of the changes coming from not just China or maybe from the region surrounding? And you being here in Chiang Mai, what is your future goal, plan, and how do you think the Chiang Mai Fat Community Team can help you maybe achieve what you want to do here?
Yeah, I don't know. You know, I think that what I would argue is that, again, even what this man suggested, you know, I've lived in Japan and I've lived in China, and to be honest, we're never going to be Chinese. You know, we're never going to be Japanese, even less so Japanese. And I feel that in some ways, from what I've heard from some of the expats here in Thailand, a lot of us will never be Thai as well. We're constantly going for 90-day visa runs, whatever. This to me then, as I hope that Asia will become more inclusive. I don't know if they can do that.
It's me in Thailand, it's not true. Have a legal way to stay in Thailand, it's not same as China.
No, it's not, of course.
Compare Thailand democracy with the Chinese dictatorial communist state.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Fair if you're in Thailand.
I understand that we are allowed to talk and we will take them one by one question and you will raise your hand.
Yeah, just if you want.
Just corrected him. I didn't say anything. I said he's in Thailand.
Thank you for your sharing that. I don't think you have to raise your voice in a big crowd like this. And please calm down and you will have a chance to talk and we do not want to be any raised voice in this room. Thank you so much.
But these things, I think, in China, and I think some of us know, it's still, unfortunately, look at all we've done, and we still are not, we aren't Chinese. Every day I'm called on the streets, Lao Wai. You are called Lao Wai every day, 15, 20 times. And Lao Wai means foreigner, old foreigner, whatever. And I just think that if we, in the States, my wife is Chinese American, if she walked everywhere, constantly said, oh, Chinese, old Chinese, old Chinese, that would be NPR leading news story, So this is something we just accept here in China, that we are never really a part of the culture. And that to me is something that as I hope that China and Japan will be able to address those issues. And that they will stand as a countries with values, not solely, ethnic identity. So, yes, Richard.
As an investor in China, I'm interested in your take on, how reliable you think how much reliability we should attach to China's economic figures.
Oh, that's a good question. And to be honest, I'm not so sure. That's what I get in general when I'm at conferences. They're not so sure. My feeling is that right now, China is having economic downturn. We have seen it quite dramatically in the hospitality industry. But how that translates into a wider, nationwide, we don't know. Again, I'm not in Beijing or Shanghai, so I can't really offer you any real value, No, I wish I could. I wish I knew more. Yeah.
Hello. Oh, yeah, right.
Yes.
Hi, yeah. My question is really, it's more to do with the Chinese education system. And
okay.
About, because I work with Chinese students. Do you think the government is, the pressure they're under is enormous? They got their Zhongkao, they got gout.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got 14-year-old students on antidepressants and stuff. Does the Chinese government, do you think over time they are starting to recognize that perhaps this level of pressure on students, on the youth, is really having a detrimental effect?
I think, what do you think?
So I think it's seen in China, actually, the college entrance rates overall is around 65 to 70%. So to a certain extent, there seems to me little pressure on the students who just want to go to the universities or the top universities. Like you mean the Zhongkao, the high exams or the final exams. But as compared to the period when I was a student, when I applied for the college in early 1980s, the entrance rate is only 1%. So now it's 65 to 17%.
God, it's amazing.
In terms of the depression, the students suffer, compared to my age, they are 100% typically treatable compared.
You say there are no jobs in China for Chinese people. Graduate people finish university and go find a job in China. That's the thing you're facing.
Have you ever been to China?
Yo, which you tell me you were a professor there.
I am a professor there.
Yeah,
I'm not from China, so please be quiet.
Okay. You will know why.
Please be patient and I want you to go to one topic at a time and we discuss on that and we take time to discuss. And I think there are a lot of questions still going on more. And may I say you? Thank you.
Sure, Rory.
I'm interested with the rammed earth, the rammed earth building. I know in Chiang Mai they have quite a lot of rammed earth resorts to the Insan campaign and around there. I wondered if you're looking to do that type of a thing here in Chiang Mai.
You know, I don't know enough about Thai society, so I would love to do something here if we could. Mainly just out of personal reasons to stay active. But I don't know enough yet, and I'm willing to learn. I mean, part of the joy of coming here is my wife and I look forward to really immersing ourselves and taking, intensive Thai at Chiang Mai University. And so I will, but I still don't know enough, So my experience has been mainly in China. And I don't know if there's a market for it, how the hospitality market is here. I just don't know.
I have a friend that runs a resort that's made that way, if you'd like to meet him.
Okay, cool. Yes, sir.
Moving your family to Chiang Mai, right?
Well, my family is grown up now, my sons, but my wife and I, yeah.
I'm just curious, who will be operating your center?
We will still be active, and I have a team. So I have a partner. I'm a minority shareholder now of my company. I've given over the shares to my team. So I've just given them shares over the time because they have been with me a long time, and I haven't been able to give. One of the guys who designed the rammed earth structure, he is an urban planner from Berkeley. He's a Dali boy. His wife is a UC Berkeley architect from the Shanghai region. We are all working together, and the salaries they are getting from our company are very, very low. So they are working more out of passion, and I have surprised them by slowly giving them equity. So they now have more equity than I do. So they'll take care of the company, I think, very well.
We are good with the questions. Do you have any more?
No.
We are good.
No, I hope, again, as I said, and if some of you in the near future, please follow us. We hope that that we will make a transition. We don't know for sure. Steve and Narwan have been helping us a bit. So we'll see if it's possible. But we come with very open minds, and we want to, we've heard only positive things from everybody. Okay? Thanks. All right. Thank you.